Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
And you know our next guest very well. He's Julien Lapraz, who is VP Marketing and Sales for the renowned French company La Fermière. I won't say any more, but welcome him to the program and turn it over to you.
Bonjour, Julien. Welcome to the show.
Hey, bonjour, Anne. Merci.
Please, let's start by having you tell us a little bit about you. You're from France, and you were educated both there and in the U.S. Tell us a little bit about your early history, and then what attracted you to come to the U.S.
Well, first of all, thank you, Anne and Don, for having me on the show. This is correct. My name is Julien Lapraz, and I work with La Fermière. I first came in the U.S. to study. I came here in 2001. So as you can imagine, it was a really unique time to be here in New York. I was doing my MBA here, and it was hard to leave after being so attached to New Yorkers. So I've been here ever since.
Wonderful. You've been with two terrific companies, both in the dairy business, both Lactalis and now La Fermière. I believe both are family-owned businesses, but on different scales. Can you talk a little bit about the companies?
This is correct. Yes, this is correct. Very, very different scale. So as you know, in France, it's being a French person here in the U.S., it's kind of difficult to escape your destiny to work for a food company, I guess. So I first started with Lactalis. It's today a big company, about like more than 70,000 employees. And now La Fermière is really a different scale because we're only about 200 employees. And here now for the U.S. adventure, we less than 5 employees. So you can imagine it's very different scale.
Wonderful. What are the challenges of being a French company doing business in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess there are many challenges. And also one thing I've learned with the U.S. spirit is like those challenges can also turn into opportunities. The biggest challenge, I would say, sometimes can be the English. I mean, the language, because you have to adapt your packaging. You have to make it compliant with the different regulations, and sometimes being a foreign company can be a challenge because you don't always know what you need to follow to be compliant. So I would say the first challenge is this one. And the other challenge is like, how do you bring a new product to the market with a brand name that is not known for the most part in the country? So I would say brand name also can be sometimes a challenge.
That's really great. I also would like to have you think a little bit about what advice, in fact, you would give to any foreign company about doing business in the U.S. You've been through this a couple of times, and I'm sure you have a great perspective on. You were starting to mention some of the challenges, but if you were to give someone advice, what would be the top 3 things you would say to them about what they need to really be aware of in terms of doing business in the U.S.?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I would say for sure the first one, I would say to have a strong network. I believe it starts with connections and relationships, and I think you learn so much from reaching out to people you already have in your network. So being a foreign company, if you have already friends or connections in the country where you want to launch your brand or your product, it's already a huge advantage because those connections will open your doors. They will give you recommendations. So you save a lot of time instead of reading tons of articles. Sometimes in just 1 hour, you can learn from the experience of your former colleagues or experts in the field. So I would start with that as number one. Number two, come prepared financially. I don't think you can launch in the US if you don't have a strong business plan and financial backup. It is expensive. I'm not going to lie. You have to invest in packaging, creative agencies, Now in this day and age, you have to go on social networks, and it's not free. If you want to do a good job, you have to invest there. And the third one, definitely, as I was mentioning earlier, regulations. I would say if you come here as a tourist, you will fail miserably. You cannot play with the law and the regulations. So food regulations, be aware of what are the must-haves and the don't do, if I may say.
I think that's great advice. And since you're actually here in the U.S., I would say one of the fundamentals is you can't really do business in the U.S. without having people on the ground in the U.S. It's really important to be here and to really help the business along. You can't sort of do that in a sort of a third-hand kind of way. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Anna. Absolutely. Because the challenge sometimes is like for foreign companies, they have their own vision of their own market, and they would do business as usual, coming here thinking they have the best product and that it will succeed. And unfortunately, in the US, from my experience, my humble experience, I would say it's not just the best product that will sell, but also understanding the intricacies. I mean, who to talk to, when to talk to, when are the business negotiations taking place with the retailers. If you don't know that, if you don't have an experience here locally, I don't think you can succeed with just having a good product. You really need to understand the industry. So you have to be humble and learn from scratch every day.
Right. And it's also, you have when the category evaluations are taking place, because that either can get you on the shelf at the right time or you've missed the opportunity to be able to have your product be distributed.
This is correct.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the products from La Fermière and why they are so different from other products in their category. And then I'm going to have you talk a little bit about the yogurt category, because it's a very, very large category with lots and lots of players, both domestically and internationally.
Yep. So La Fermière is a French company. It was created actually in 1952. So we go way back, about 60 years, in France, south of France, in Provence. Actually, the city is Marseille, if you've ever been there. So very sunny with lavender fields all over. And actually, we're known today for our yogurt and also for our desserts. And what makes us different is two things, I would say. Our savoir-faire, so what's inside the packaging, so the yogurt itself, but also the packaging itself. We use terracotta. This is our iconic pot made of, so terracotta, it's clay. And we also use glass pots for our food of the bottom line. So it's very unique packaging, both to represent what's inside the packaging, like noble ingredients, deserves a proper outfit. And
I believe I might be right on this, but please correct me. You make your products in the U.S., but with the original recipes from France. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of trying to duplicate the recipe, especially given a product that's made from milk?
Absolutely. So yes, the idea was really to be coherent and to bring our savoir-faire, the exact same recipes here in the United States. So we've worked with Cornell University to assist us along the way with the FDA to explain our process, because we had our own French touch, if I may say. And we had to educate and make sure we were compliant. So for instance, we use a very unique process where or technique, I should say, where we infuse some of the ingredients, the fruit, we infuse it in the yogurt. So that was a new technique that we had to explain step by step. And Cornell University really helped us be compliant. So this is as close as possible as the French way. I would say we're really 99% French recipe or same taste, same texture. So we're very happy with the final results.
You also have a focus on sustainability. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what that means to your company?
Yes, absolutely. So, as I was saying earlier, we use really like noble ingredients. So when we use the noble ingredients, the vision of the company is to be as good on the inside as the outside. So for us, using plastic was not an option. We use, for instance, today vanilla beans from Madagascar, or organic lemons, many different ingredients, very noble. So we felt like to have a beautiful packaging, we needed to have a sustainable packaging. So that means the terracotta. As you may know, it's made with earth, clay. So it does not pollute and it's sustainable. And also, we really encourage the consumers, our family, we call them a family of gourmands, the ones who enjoy our recipes. We encourage them to use for DIY purposes. So if you go on our Instagram, you can have many different ideas on how to reuse the pots and be sustainable. You can use them to decorate your home, to put your jewelry inside the pot, to plant some flowers in there. So tons of different ideas. And same goes for the glass pot that we use for our fruit at the bottom. So very sustainable.
Wonderful. Where are you distributed today, and what are you trying to achieve over the next several years in terms of distribution?
So today we are based right now in New York. So the first step naturally was to launch in the Northeast. You can find us already in approximately 200 different stores. We only launched 4 months ago, so you can go in the tri-state area. For now, that's where you'll find us. And we're slowly expanding, going to different cities on the Northeast. So very soon in New England, then in Pennsylvania, and soon also Midwest, etc. So the adventure is beginning, but for sure with all the support we have, we believe we'll go nationally also in the next few years. That's the objective.
Wonderful. You've also given back to your French roots through the French American Chamber of Commerce. Tell us a little bit about the work that organization has done and how you've been involved with them.
Yes. Well, actually, on a personal level, I always felt if I could bring the relationship, the French and the American, that would always be very positive. Meaning, sometimes the French American Chamber of Commerce, for instance, helps young entrepreneurs or young students who wants to come study here in the U.S. They give them scholarships, and vice versa. American students who want to go in France, they will have also the opportunity to have a scholarship. So I always love this idea of giving back to youth, to education, and also helping bridge cultural differences. And I think the French American Chamber of Commerce is just a great way to bring the two cultures closer.
What other social responsibility areas hold your interest?
What other social responsibility are my interest? Well, yeah. one thing that comes to mind right away is definitely going out in restaurants. I mean, you will always see me trying new foods. I think it's a social moment you always share with your friends. So that would definitely always be linked to food, and also martial arts, where it's a moment for myself to stay grounded, especially in a crazy city like New York, PD.
I think that's terrific, and quite opposite, different ends of the spectrum. I think when Americans think of French, they think of really fine food. So, when you think about food, what really interests you? My sense is it's not just that it has to be really great food or French food. What are the food that you tend to experiment?
Mm-hmm. So I think food is really an emotional experience at so many different levels, both personal and also a great way to interact with friends. I think you can have amazing conversations during a meal. And I think that the food that really appeals to me would be the ones that not only appeals to what do you call that, taste buds, but also the visual. I think beautiful presentations plays a huge role. So that's definitely the type of food I would go for. I would get really excited visually if I see a nice presentation, whether it be Japanese food, French food, or Italians, or American food is fantastic. Like we see all these beautiful dishes, but just food itself, no, it has to connect to all the senses, I would say.
Okay, that's wonderful. I want to just circle back to the dairy and the yogurt industry itself and the business. You know, it's very interesting to have watched the yogurt business transform over time. You know, we've had the plain yogurt, sort of very Middle Eastern focused, to the flavored yogurts, to yogurts in frozen form, to Greek yogurt, which is thicker, and now even Greek yogurt companies coming back with, you know, non-Greek yogurt, I guess is what they refer to it as. What do you see is happening in this category, and what do you think is coming in the yogurt business and the dairy business?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, when I first came here, actually, it's a joke I have with friends sometimes. When I first came here in the early 2000s, I could barely find yogurt on the shelf here in the U.S. And 17 years fast forward, you see a tremendous amount of new brands that just emerged. You have the big players and now smaller players, so it becomes extremely competitive. And I don't think it's going to change. I think that level of competition is really going to increase over the next few years. You are correct to say that there are country-specific recipes. Like you said, the Greek become non-Greek. So you're right. You have Greek yogurt. You also have now Icelandic yogurt. The latest comer now is the French yogurt. As we've seen in the last few years, very recently, now we see in America this trend where going for whole milk. Whole milk is now perceived as a good for you, like a good fat, and that's what the French yogurt is all about now. That's why you see on the shelves a huge appeal for French yogurt, and that's why La Fermière is here now, because consumers understand that whole milk is not necessarily going to be bad for your health. So we've seen Greek, as you said, trying to become non-Greek because they understand that the trends are changing. Now consumers are really looking for more indulgent alternatives, and that's exactly our positioning. That's what we are. We're an indulgent brand, and that's what we believe we can bring to share our recipes today in the U.S.
Now, you also have dessert products. Can you talk a little bit more about the types of products that are there, what makes them unique?
Sure. So we do have dessert in France, actually, and here in the U.S. we only have for now 7 flavors of yogurt. So we only focus on the yogurt. Mm-hmm. As I was mentioning earlier, there are regulations here in the U.S. You cannot just. I'm just going to give you an example. We make in France chocolate mousse. So fantastic chocolate mousse. You cannot import that here in the U.S. So we would need to make it here locally, for instance. So we just have to be a little patient. And maybe in the next few years you'll see us with desserts that we make in France, but made here locally.
You know, being in the dairy business and really a short shelf life business is a very big challenge. What are kinds of some of the things that make the dairy business quite unique from other parts of the store, and makes complexity of managing a business a bit more challenging?
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is definitely what was on our top priority when we first started in the U.S. Was to be cognizant that we have a short shelf life item. So when I say short shelf life, it means we offer 30-day shelf life to our retailers when we deliver them, and other companies, for instance, they add preservatives to have longer shelf life to 75 days and 90 days. Some push it really far. Our motto is really to have no preservatives and to be all natural. So that's why we have a really short shelf life. And the challenge was really to have top-notch logistics. If you don't have good distributors or good logistics in place, then you cannot sustain this short shelf life. So yes, definitely shelf life is unique to our industry. Yeah.
And certainly for distributors, because typically a big distributor will want a 90-day shelf life. So your ability to solve that problem is really crucial to your success. Do you find that you store or deliver, or are you finding smaller distributors that are able to handle a short shelf life product?
Well, yes. I mean, today the distributors we approach, we always make sure they have an experience with short shelf life items. So you could ask, for instance, a distributor who sells eggs. So they already, for instance, know the challenges. So usually that's how we ask a couple of questions to make sure they know how to handle the short shelf life items. Yeah. Yeah.
And any thoughts about the whole area of food service? You have a stunning product. You have a very unique product. It's wonderful terracotta packaging. It almost seems like it shouldn't be in retail, that it should be in some kind of upscale, restaurant or a different place where it can be appreciated more. Any thoughts on that, or don't give away any strategies, but I was just curious if you've been thinking about other channels of distribution.
No, absolutely. You're right. As a new brand here in the US, we want as much visibility as possible, and also offer our consumers like opportunities to find us, whether it be on Sundays when they go to a brunch. So yes, we definitely are considering this channel to approach restaurants, hotels. But bear in mind, it's only been 4 months. So for now, it's true, we've been focusing a lot on retail. But definitely, if we can be in food service, that's definitely something important for us.
So do you have a favorite flavor?
I would say the vanilla. That's definitely my favorite flavor among the 7 flavors we have today. Yes, we infuse the vanilla beans from Madagascar in the yogurt, and it has this unique texture that we call capsette. I don't know if you're familiar with the word, but literally what it means is like when you put the milk, the whole milk, you put cultures in it, you infuse with the vanilla, and then you put like in a hot room. That's how it works. It's like you bake your yogurt technically for a few hours, and it gives this firm texture that's really unique to a traditional French texture that you don't find so much in other yogurt. So that's definitely the best flavor for me, and really my favorite texture as well.
If you were to think about how you would like people to think about yogurt and your yogurt differently than other yogurts on the marketplace. Yes, you've talked about, really how pure it is and unique it is, but maybe in some respects, I wonder if you really compete in the yogurt category, because you have this wonderful dairy product that should be considered competing in maybe in a different way. Any thoughts on that from your perspective? Because it's sort of like the second you say yogurt, it puts people in a certain context about your product.
When you say it puts in a certain context, what context would you think about, Anna? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so competitively, it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to have La Fermière yogurt instead of another yogurt. I'm thinking maybe La Fermière should be considered instead of some other dairy product or some other, as a better snack or as a better, I wonder if there's something in the positioning that could be really exciting for La Fermière to sort of say yogurt isn't just about, a certain time of day, or yogurt, this particular yogurt isn't just about yogurt occasions,
Sure. No, that's a very good point. Well, definitely. I mean, our positioning is no surprise. We indulgent. So this is definitely for us. It's savoring the moment. When you have a La Fermière yogurt, we really strive to give you a unique experience where you can really reconnect to your senses. I know it sounds maybe touchy-feely. I invite you to taste. It gives you a moment where maybe it takes the stress away, where time stops, and I think that's the idea. It's like you indulge. It's pleasure. It's a moment where you had a long day maybe, or you're stressed, or you want to give yourself a little moment of pleasure. So I think that's really our way to see the yogurt for us. It should be this moment, unique moment.
Terrific. As you think about the challenges that you're facing forward, Julien, what are the kinds of things that keep you up at night?
Well, a lot of things, but the number one, it's a terrific adventure. So I think the entrepreneurship, the adventure, the team. I mean, we're all together in it, and we have it's a new category, the French yogurt category. So there are tons of challenges, definitely, as you can imagine. And also, I would say the feedback. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, we see smiles along the way. I can share a story. We were with our CEO and the team on the field, looking at our different placements in different supermarkets and gourmet stores. And when you stop in the aisles and you see the dairy managers with a smile and telling you, "Hey guys, thank you, it's really nice." I mean, that keeps me up at night. That's really, and especially to see the eyes of my CEO, who's so happy of the hard work of the team, because it was his dream actually to come here in the US, and he knows he could not have done it alone. So same for me, I could not have done it alone. So it's really like we feel like family. So that's really a very, very beautiful feeling.
I think that was a great way to just present sort of where you're heading and where La Fermière is heading, and I really hope for it to have all kinds of success. I need to go out and get some now because I really need to try this yogurt. Dawn, I'm going to turn it back to you for any closing questions or making sure that we get Julien's website on Food and Wine Insider.
And we get it correctly. Julien, your website again, will you spell it out for our audience?
Yes, sure, Don. So it's www.lafermiere, so I'll spell it, LAFERMIERE.US, lafermiere.us. So we also are on Instagram, so it would be La Fermière US, so LA_Fermière, so F as a family, ERMIERE_US, La_Fermière_US. And I invite you to check our beautiful recipes, DIYs on Instagram and the website.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Julien.
Thank you for having me.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book, Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
And our next guest comes to us from Italy. Vicenzi is a prominent Italian bakery with market leadership in puff pastry and ladyfingers. To build a brand in the U.S., they moved Christian Saldi, one of their key employees, to Miami to establish a U.S.-based company. He's with us here today to talk about this and some of his other experiences. Apparently, he's one of their key people to open new markets. And I'm going to let him tell you his story. Christian, welcome to the program.
Hi. Thank you, Don. Everybody, good morning.
I'd like to welcome you to Food and Wine Insider, and truly wonderful to have you on the show. I did some reading about your background, and I wonder if you could just start to tell us the story of Matilde Vicenzi. And, you know, I'm aware that Italy has so many, wonderful food regions. Where specifically does your product originate from?
Yes, right. So you got a good point. Italy is really, every city literally has a lot of food culture when it comes to food and wine as well, I would say. Matilde Vicenzi was a real person other than the name of our company. So in 1905, she started baking and opening, I would say, a bakery when she baked traditional Italian cookies like amaretti, ladyfingers, or puff pastries, which we call millefoglie in Italian. So she actually started making those beautiful pastries when she was a widow. So she had to make up with her family, and she had several kids. So she made things really well, apparently. And then again, the company started growing and growing. The third generation, Giuseppe Vicenzi, who is still the president of the company, is now running the operations, and now we are the fourth generation, actually. So the company is originally from Verona, which is in the northeast of Italy, I think most of you know. It's a kind of a bakery district. I mean, it's very famous for its wines, actually, but the bakery from Verona is also very good, I would say. Matilde Vicenzi actually left her heritage, and today the company is really, I would say, different in size, but it still has that kind of spirit that was in her founder, Matilde. So even though the name is Vicenzi, which is another city in our Veneto region, we are from Verona again.
That's fantastic. You know, her grandson, Giuseppe, actually transformed the company in 2005, if I read the information correctly. And it is the Vicenzi Group, and he acquired all the Parmalat baking branch, including, two well-known brands. So it's really quite a good-sized company, starting from really humble roots from what Matilde was producing at home. Can you tell me a little bit about the broader company, the Vicenzi Group, and what Giuseppe has really sort of envisioned for the company?
Sure. So we were, after the World War II, in Italy, we really had a lot of, coming out of a lot of different entrepreneurs who founded those food groups that are active still today. I mean, I can name Ferrero, Barilla, just to name a couple. So there were these figures of entrepreneurs who really took a basic start of business to the next level. So they did it by industrializing, by automatizing the production. However, sometimes, I would say most of the time, the way they made the production in a fully automatic way was still reflecting the way we originally made those products in an artisanal way. In our case, the way Giuseppe used to build a massive production plant to make millefoglie is really amazing. I want to share this with you. Millefoglie is a puff pastry, is actually made by hand with a rolling pin. So you have to make layers on layers and to fold them many times with a rolling pin. Again, by hand you can probably reach like 40 or 50 layers, and then you get a nice puff product after it's cooked. By machine, you can go up to 192 layers in 1 millimeter in our case. So this is one of the few examples where the automatic production or the industrial production improves the quality of the product rather than the other way. So this is really something interesting I like to tell as a story. And the machinery Giuseppe bought to make this millefoglie line, which is probably our best known product in the world today, is actually coming from Japan. So he traveled to Japan in the 50s, bought this machinery, which was state-of-the-art at that time, and then he brought it back to Italy. So that there is something Asian at the heart of this company. That's why maybe today we are so successful in Asia as well. Talking about the change of size of the company. So Parmalat, most of you probably know, it is a big dairy group from Italy, from Parma. They sold out their bakery division with the beautiful brands like Grisby, Mr. Day, which are really popular in Europe. So we took them over in 2005. And then it was probably the single time when the company really doubled in size and became to be a structured company and a major player in the bakery company worldwide. The nice thing is that some kind of mainstream cookies in the hands of Giuseppe became some kind of pastry. So we kind of rebranded them. We made their packaging, improved their recipes. So that's why the line now is successful, and the company is actually growing at a very fast rate every year. We are now crossing 150 million turnover per year, and investing massively in new product development right now.
Fantastic. You know, John mentioned earlier that you've been the man on the ground, sort of establishing the business, and while you've come to the U.S. to do that here, you also, if I read it correctly, established the brand in the Middle East and Asia. Tell us a little bit about how that was accomplished.
Correct. So I still remember those years as my, adventures here. I joined the company in 2005. So the year when we took over Parmalat, and I started running here and there to sell these new wonderful cookies. The first assignment I had at that time, we had some ethnic presence in the U.S. market through importers, like many other brands. So the U.S. was considering a nice market for the company. So there was no reason to send a pioneer to the U.S. at that time. So they sent me instead to China, to Saudi Arabia, but also soon I started covering some really remote areas of the globe. So I would say that the nice experience I had was in Asia to find how the consumers were really attracted by this brand. But there were a lot of funny stories about it. I mean, when it comes to China, which is an amazing country with a lot of differences, probably as much as the U.S., a lot of consumers were complaining that our product had a shelf life of like 12 months. They were complaining to us. They say, it's too long. It's too much. I say, why? This is standard. No. And then we found out that actually in Chinese, they have to pronounce our name in Chinese, which means Vicenzi Rede Waisin, which means in Chinese something like freshness of a week, something like that. So they expected our cookies to last a week most. That's why they were complaining to us. But I had some other stories. I mean, I remember when I was in Malaysia with our distributor there, and really we had a great marketing campaign and distribution everywhere, I would say. Nice launch of the brand. However, in Malaysia, we couldn't sell a lot. And later I found out that one of the reasons was that Matilde, in their cultures, means something like death. So people, they really didn't want to buy those kind of, Halloween cookies from Italy. And this was one of the reasons why we couldn't succeed there. However, I would say Asia became soon the number one region, I would say, of the world for our company. So by the time I actually left from those markets, the company had reached totally like 110 countries of export, which is quite a lot. I mean, every country has its own difficult things, and that's probably why having such a big presence in Asia, the company owner decided to become bigger in the U.S. And I think he made a good move, not to move me here, but also, I mean, I'm happy to be here, but the good move was to consider U.S. not as one more export market. That is a secret, I think, for a foreign brand to succeed here. You have to consider this market as a domestic market for any brand. And to do so, you have to, I would say you have to overcome that logic of exporting stuff, changing or doing something to adjust. You have to consider your brand as one of the main brands you find here in the market and more or less adopt the same logic that the other brands are having. So this was really a change in our strategy. It was the first time for us to open a subsidiary office in other countries.
Christian, I think that's a really, really excellent point, because I have worked with a lot of companies from overseas who want to do business in the U.S. And my first comment has always been, you have to be here, because working with distributors, working with brokers, getting into the retail accounts, making sure the product is moving really requires you to be present in this U.S. market, because it's such a big market with so many different channels that it's very difficult to just say, okay, I export it, the exporter brings it in, then the distributor gets it to the marketplace, and it's all fine. And so I would love you to talk a little bit about the story of bringing the product to the U.S. And some of the challenges you face, because now you are present in the U.S. market and I'm sure have had to learn sort of how things are distributed here, how it's different, whether you're distributing to a supermarket or you're distributing to hotels and that sort of thing. And tell a little bit about that experience originally as an exporter and really sort of having a presence here in the U.S.
Sure. So first of all, I find the definition itself of U.S. market a little bit misleading. So one may think it's just like one entity or one country, to add a pin on the world map that every export manager likes to have. I think U.S. market can be compared in size and also in complexity to like a continent or a subcontinent. We talk about like Europe, East Asia, or Middle East, something like that. It's a distribution puzzle. I mean, it's probably like 10 different food distribution channels. So multi-ethnic profiles, different consumer targets, multi-layer distribution, so regional differences. I would rank it number one in the most complex markets worldwide out of the 110 that I know. There might be something I don't know. Probably with China. China is also quite similar to the U.S. under that respect. On the good side, when it comes to the consumer's habits, taste buds and easiness to do business, U.S. does not present the challenges that other markets have, at least for a European brand. I mean, for an American, cookies are cookies. I mean, we eat them, maybe we Italians eat them more for breakfast, but Americans like to enjoy them with a coffee or at a tea time or to share them. That's minor differences. So it's not as bad as, the perception that other cultures have of the same product. In terms of how to approach the U.S. market, well, as I said before, we shouldn't consider this as an export market. So adjusting your own products, putting a sticker on them, and try to reach out to as many customers as you can. I think having a control or a sales office here is important, at least to understand the different market channels. Each of them has its own distribution system. So, for example, in our case, our biggest success story was we started actually from the clubs. Selling big boxes, actually big, beautiful things decorated with Italian cities like Verona, Venezia, Firenze, Roma, to those big clients. And really the consumers enjoy them a lot. A nice thing was to sell an assortment. So Americans became aware that we had more than one kind of cookie. And they were looking for all of them year round, even though we sold those big boxes during Christmas or New Year. So this was probably for us the reason or the main thing to succeed. But, I would say that coming here, you really need to come in a structured way to understand what you want to have a sustainable business plan, to put up a team of people. I would say I only trust Americans when I'm here. I'm Italian, but we Italians have a lot of fantasy. We are creative and proactive in the way of approaching issues, but Americans are much better than us when it comes to management skills, setting up a team, managing brokers, these kind of things. That's why I only hire Americans here, for sure. I think that geographic difference is important, but up to a certain level. I found, I would say, a universal acceptance of our product as authentic Italian products. I think really Americans like clean products, no GMO, all natural, which we all are. So we all have these attributes, even though we made abroad. But the fact of having an Italian authentic character is important. It's not a story. I mean, our products are made in Italy. That's why we haven't come up with an idea or a plan to produce in the U.S. yet. I don't think we will do this for the next few years, at least, until the volumes are still manageable with international shipments because we want to claim these are really made in Verona. They're not made here. We think there is an added value in this in terms of the know-how that Giuseppe Vicenzi still has. When every day he tries the eggs with a spoon or something like that at the plant. So this is quite important to us. However, all about distribution, marketing, and how to, again, to position the product, to market the product, which channels to choose should be made here. We are simply not able in Europe to make these kind of decisions. We don't understand the complexity of this market from there.
No, I think that's fair. It's very interesting that you refer to it as a cookie because having lived overseas, you know, in the U.S., we have a cookie category and we have a cracker category, but overseas, things are referred to as biscuits, you know, sweet biscuits or savory biscuits. So it's interesting that you've used the nomenclature from the U.S. Because you're this biscuit, you're a pastry. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, you have a 1-year shelf life and yet you're exporting from Italy. So I'm sure that there are some loss of time in the, you know, getting from Italy, getting to, you know, the import area, docking, and then getting into distribution and then getting to retail. How do you manage that? Because we know that retailers are really sensitive to shelf life by the time it gets on the shelf to sell to the consumer.
Well, that's actually my nightmare. I think not only mine, but any exporter, really, every exporter has to cope with this. 1 year, I think it's the minimum for an imported brand to hit the market here in our category. So less than that, it's really not possible if you want to go through the normal distribution channels. So the specialty, I mean, we are specialty products, so we go through the specialty distributors, brokers, and the retailers, blah, blah, blah. So it's the normal channel that we go. You really need at least 1 year. However, 1 year you can make it without preservatives, without anything, for a dry product like ours, which is still good. It's not for all kind of products that you can make it. So, however, definitely this is a big challenge. You really need to work very well on your supply chain. You need to select warehouse, transportation, and distribution partners in a way to be able to offer the best experience of your products, even though they last for 1 year. But you know that, especially for products like puff pastry, which is, you know, it's really best if consumed fresh. So our challenge is to bring this to the consumer in the first 3 or 4 months of the shelf life, even though they last 12 months. So that's still what we are trying to do. So one thing, again, is to work very closely with your logistic partners to ensure that the product is sold at best. And the second thing, trying to do some direct business. There are nice retailers that can import the product directly. They have facilities, they have know-how, they have profile to do that, even though they are not a rule, but some of them are even big, so they can handle that. So then you need to definitely have an advantage because you will be selling a product which is on average fresh. However, you need to work very well on pricing model and try not to interfere with the main distribution channels you have. So then you have other kind of channels of challenges.
So can you just tell our listeners an interesting story of trying to get your product in distribution in any particular store? Just some of your more interesting tales, hopefully not a nightmare, that you experienced here in the U.S.
Yes. Well, I think a funny thing was I'm still missing my time in Asia and Middle East and Australia, Africa, and all those countries. So one of the nice things I noticed is that there's a trend here in the U.S. of an ethnic kind of supermarkets and hypermarkets coming out. But they're no longer ethnics because they become now major chains with over 100 point of sales throughout the nation. So this was nice because there are Koreans, big hypermarkets, and Japanese groups and Chinese groups. And with all of them, that was the first places I went, and they really recognized the brand from their, their knowledge of their ethnic market, where our brand has been around for like 30 years. So then we managed to have a direct contact with those big chains and to speak the same language with the buyers, which is unusual because they normally are approached by American brands or international brands but from other countries. And then for us, it was quite easy to get there. So that was direct business from a platform here in the US, but still direct, and a very easy, I would say, success story for our brand as well. And of course, we have a very nice cooperation. I would like to quote with Italy, which is our nice Italian boutique retailer. I think we have a perfect philosophy that they have a good philosophy that fits our brand very well, and vice versa. So it's probably one of the. It was our entry point here in the US. The first retailer we really went to, even though they have just a few stores, but they're still one of the best distribution channels for us. That's something I would like to quote.
Wonderful. And in terms of getting the product established, have you done any trade shows? Would love to know sort of some of your breakthroughs in terms of getting the attention of retailers to take on your product, to put your product in distribution.
Sure. So I would say that international shows today are shows where some big U.S. retailers really walk there and attend. So shows like, in our case, like the Paris Seal Show or Anuga in Germany, or ISM, which is a confectionery show in Germany. I just came out of this show a couple of weeks ago. So these are shows where you can meet and talk to some of the big buyers in the U.S. However, in terms of national shows, we normally do summer fancy food. We do sweets and snacks in Chicago, which is another nice show. And then, of course, the distributor show. So we do the shows of the distributors we work with, of our partners. I think especially the sweet and snack show and summer fancy food have been two good shows for us.
Terrific. Brokers, talk about the relationship you have with brokers in terms of getting your product, especially on the local areas and those relationships and how important those are.
Sure. Well, brokers, I think this is something new for me. I have to tell you, out of the 110 countries I was used to, probably in the U.S., the unique relationship that the brand has with the brokers is something that I've never seen in any other parts of the world. So in Europe, brokers are just instrumental to get to the buyer, and or you just do business with them, get some more money. But here in the U.S., they're really your sales force. You have to know them, to get to know them, to build a relationship with them first. I think having a nice network of brokers for us was probably one of the main reasons to succeed. We didn't cover initially the whole country by brokers. I mean, we had like those 4 or 5 key specialty brokers working with us, which we soon got engaged with, but I would say they were really important for us to get to the results and to get there in the beginning. I think without having a nice network of brokers, it would have taken us years to get where we are now after like 3 years.
Yeah, no, I think what you just said is unbelievably critical, that you can't just sort of assume the broker is your sales force, and so you have to really pay attention to the goals and how they're doing and their relationships and how important those are, and your relationship with them, so that it can be successful and it does the right job for your brand. Any important lessons learned? You've now established Matilde Vicenzi in the Middle East and Asia, and now in the U.S. What are some of, when Christian stands back, he thinks about, what are the biggest things I learned from this experience? What would he say?
Well, the biggest thing is that there's a certain level unto which you really need to be a pioneer and travel a lot, having your luggage ready every day. And then you need to open new markets, but I think you reach a point of time where you are mature as a brand, and then you really need to structure your presence as a brand in the region. And think regionally is very important. I mean, there are those 4 or 5 clusters in the world that all have different, I would say, needs but common kind of patterns in terms of consumer habits and culture, language, whatever. So you really need to, I would say, as an international company, which I hope today every company aims to be, you really need to be ready to that level. Being ready means not just wanting to export your product there, but means that you need to understand, you need to be ready, come with a business plan, open an office, and hire people. That's what really needs to be done. My positive experience in those years I've worked for Vicenzi was that even a small company, I mean, when I joined the company, we really were considered a regional, a big regional company, but still a regional company. And today we are one of the names of those international bakery companies. So it's possible, it can be done not in such a long period of time. So this is something that I would like to bring out as an experience and as a positive learning from my job.
And is there a vision for the company and for the brand in the U.S. that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, I told you before, we started with a team. Well, it's not only that we started with a team. Actually, we want to be the leaders in the gift market in cookies in our specific pastry segment. So we don't want, of course, to compete with the butter cookies, which is an established kind of product or segment in the market. But we would like to create something new. That's why the company owner is actually investing a lot of money this month, actually, to restructure the whole production line in a way that it's all automatic, going from the raw materials to the end finished gift tin under the same roof, in the same production line, which is something quite unique. And we believe U.S. will be the #1 market worldwide for this specific line of products. So we see ourselves in like 3 years or 5 years as the recognized leaders in this kind of gift market. This is something nice. Then, of course, product-wise, we would like to establish every day our puff pastry line, which is something new and unique to the market, to the main retailers and the main grocery channels.
You know, it's very interesting. In Italy, there's all these wonderful espresso shops that you stop, you have an espresso, you have a biscuit. It's just a wonderful experience because it's this sort of sense of always being a part of the community and taking a time out. And, of course, we have a brand, Starbucks, in the U.S. that, has created this coffee shop experience, though not quite like the espresso I've had in Italy. I'm wondering if you were talking about in Italy, people eat these really with breakfast. If there's some kind of opportunity to get your product in front of the consumer in, coffee shops or tea shops or that kind of thing, and have you thought about that?
Sure, absolutely. You're touching a very important project of our company, which is still not totally official, but we are working on it. As an anticipation, I can tell you that the concept of a cafe, our cafeteria, which is more than a cafe, we are offering other kind of products. Or, we have this pastry shop, which we call Pasticceria, and this is actually in our brand name, Pasticceria Matilde Vicenzi. It's a coffee shop or a bakery shop. So we got this kind of retail concept in our DNA, and we are trying to come out with a concept for the U.S. market, which will probably hit the market as a test toward the end of this year, but it will be developed completely next year probably. So we're not talking about, long time. I think that would be very important. The U.S. consumer needs to be, informed properly of how is the atmosphere and how is the way you have to consume a product and the way you have to have it. So this is very important again for us. It is something that, of course, it's a little bit different from the selling our cookies or pastries, actually, how Mr. Vicenzi needs me to ask to say in a supermarket, on a supermarket shelf, or in a nice pasticceria. But I think both of them need to be implemented in the U.S. market, and that will help brand awareness for sure.
Yeah. Christian, I want to thank you. I think I could ask you at least 5 or 6 more questions, but we've run a bit out of time. And I just want to thank you so much for being a part of the show and taking the time to tell us your story. And wish you continued good luck. I'm going to switch it over to Don because I'm sure he's going to ask you about sharing your website so that consumers can know a lot more about Matilde Vicenzi and your brand.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Christian, your website for listeners and how they can reach you?
That's a puzzle. That's www.matildevicenzi.com. I'm going to go ahead and spell it. It's MatildeVicenzi.com. Matilde Vicenzi. And we also have Instagram and Facebook.
Also, a link to your website will be on Food and Wine Insider tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to having you on the show again.
Food and Wine Insider.